At number 8, a Ferrari Dino 246 GTS. In February of 1978, a group of young kids was playing in the dirt in front of a Los Angeles home in West Athens. As they dug at the ground, one of them felt something metal beneath them. To their surprise, they found what looked like the roof of a car. Confused, the kids decided to show a nearby police officer. The sheriff was just as stumped, but the excavation began. Detectives Joe Sabas and Lenny Carroll soon unearthed a dark, metallic green Ferrari Dino 246 GTS using a skip loader and some willing volunteers with shovels. The car was in surprisingly good shape, with a tarp wrapped around it and the interior stuffed with towels to stop worms from getting in. This raised the question though, how did it get there? After questioning the property owners where the car had been found, they were just as clueless. Detectives then turned to the vehicle's registration plate to try and find some answers. The registration showed that the car belonged to a man named Rosendo Cruz, who had purchased it in 1974. Just 2 months after buying the car, Cruz reported the Ferrari as stolen, but no leads ever came in from this, and the case soon went cold. Renewed interest in the Ferrari Dino picked up in 1986, when a journalist from an auto magazine, Greg Sharp, reported on it. The fact that it was in good condition made many interested in buying the car, but its actual state was less than perfect, with freckled paintwork, dents, and even a busted windshield. To make sure prospective buyers knew exactly what state the car was in, the insurance company that had custody of the vehicle decided to put it on show. It was displayed in a barn in Pasadena for people to inspect. After showcasing it for 2 days, it was then put up for auction. This turned out to be a costly mistake. People who viewed the car had pretty much stolen everything they could, even the dipstick was missing. Not to mention they received next to no legitimate bids. But they did eventually find a buyer. With a bid between $5,000 and $9,000, the original insurance payout of the car was $22,500. It was bought by a young mechanic who somehow managed to get the car to start. However, its operational time was short-lived since the cylinder rings soon got stuck. Today, no one really knows the whereabouts of the once underground Ferrari Dino. It's possible that it was scrapped, or it's still owned by the mechanic just rusting away somewhere. Number 7. The Packard 90 8-door. The Packard 90 8-door from 1941 is the strangest of vehicles out there. This classic car looks like a mashup between a bus and a limo, with a curved chassis and sunken rear windows. The 22-foot-long car had a removable soft-top canvas roof and a 3-speed manual transmission. With its 356 CID flathead 8 engine, it wasn't very fast, but then again, most cars its size would be pretty slow. With 4 doors on each side, it could hold up to 12 people with 3 passengers in each row. But who would buy such a weird car? Initially, it was used as a tour bus, ferrying visitors around Yellowstone National Park and other popular destinations. In fact, one has been painstakingly restored and is still running in western Yellowstone to this day. But one Packard 90 in particular wasn't as fortunate. It was abandoned and left alone to the elements, eventually becoming covered in rust. In 2015, the car was auctioned off at Sotheby's. Despite its condition, it reached a price of $55,000. It's unknown whether the 8-door vehicle was still in working order when it went under the hammer, but it's clear that someone certainly didn't want to miss out on such an interesting piece of automotive history. Number 6. The McBarge. In 1986, Vancouver, Canada held the World Exposition on Transportation and Communication. Many people flocked to the city, and if they wanted a quick bite to eat, they stopped at a brand new McDonald's. But this restaurant wasn't like your typical drive-thru. This McDonald's floated on the water of False Creek. The McBarge, as it's more affectionately known as, functioned exactly like a normal McDonald's, but after the expo finished, it closed down and was abandoned. The barge, also known by its official name, Friendship 500, was anchored at Burrard Inlet for 30 years. It was untouched except for the occasional urban explorer and used as a set for part of the Blade Trinity movie. In 2015, the McBarge was bought by Howard Meakin and moved to Maple Ridge. Meakin planned to completely refurbish and restore the building. It's unclear what it will become since Howard is keeping it under wraps, although he did allow a film crew to look inside back in 2021. Some think it will become a restaurant again, others have guessed at a floating museum. What do you think the McBarge will turn into? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Number 5. The Cars in the Woods. In the UK county of Cheshire, an urban explorer made a strange discovery. While traveling through the countryside, Daniel Sims spotted a huge number of automobiles hidden in the woods. The vehicles were spread across a large area and included cars from across the decades. One of the biggest finds Daniels made was a fire engine used in Wrexham, Wales over 90 years ago. There were 50 to 70 vehicles in total on the site, including more common road cars and even luxury Land Rovers that were becoming taken over by mold. Strangely, the doors to the vehicles were all unlocked. After exploring a bit more, Sims spotted a man working on a car and decided to speak with him. It turned out that the mystery man actually owned all of the vehicles and made a living selling spare parts and fixing them up. But the collection had gotten out of hand, and a lot of the vehicles had been untouched for years. Still, the man lived on the land. Sims didn't reveal the location of the vehicles, but if you ever end up driving through rural Cheshire, keep your eyes peeled for a boatload of rusting cars between the trees. At number 4, the trailers of the Salton Sea. The Salton Sea, in southern California's Colorado desert, was created accidentally back in 1905 when severe rains and ill-advised irrigation canal construction caused the powerful Colorado River to flow into the Salton Sink. The resulting below-sea level lake spawned a building boom that featured several resorts, marinas, and trailer parks. Despite the fact that the water was saltier than the Pacific itself, it quickly became a desert paradise, drawing in vacationers by the thousands. But the location now lies deserted. The people have left, but their RVs have not. So why did they all leave? In the 1950s, pollution around the Salton Sea started to increase. On top of this, the fish in the water started to die in droves, which wasn't exactly the sort of things that you'd want to smell while on a family vacation. To this day, the shells of the trailers and campers litter the site. One has the skeleton of a fish painted on its side, as a reminder of what actually killed the tourism industry here. Another is completely pink, with all pink appliances inside too. The trailers have all started to fall apart over time, and metal scavengers and scrappers have recently been removing the siding from the vintage trailers and RVs. Meanwhile, by the side of the salty shore, which grows bigger as the water of the Salton Sea dries up once again, encrusted skeletons of dead fish continue to wash up. At number 3, a Chronoplan Lun. The ground effect vehicle, sometimes called a Chronoplans, is a hybrid of airplanes and ships. The International Maritime Organization recognizes them as ships, but their distinctive high-speed capabilities stem from their ability to skim the water's surface. They move over the water without touching it, but cannot get fully airborne. In essence, there really isn't anything else like them in the world. The Soviet military was intrigued by the combination of speed and stealth offered by the Chronoplans. In particular, the fact that they weren't easily picked up by radar. This meant that they were perfect technology to focus on during the Cold War. Their deployment on the large inland body of water separating the Soviet Union and Iran earned them the nickname the Caspian Sea Monster. One of the last Chronoplans developed by the Soviet Union was the Lun. It wasn't exactly a small craft, being even longer than the giant Airbus A380. Despite its massive size, it could reach speeds of up to 340 miles an hour. The Lun was also outfitted with 6 anti-ship guns in case it ever engaged in combat. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, the Lun-class Chronoplan was left beached and abandoned at the Kaspiysk naval base on the edge of the Caspian Sea. It stayed there for almost 30 years. In July of 2020, a team of 14 tugboats moved the Chronoplan up the coast to the Russian city of Derbent, where it will hopefully become a tourist attraction. Since then, though, it has remained just as unloved as it was at the naval base. Construction of the tourist attraction to be built around the plane keeps being pushed off, and it's unsure when it will actually begin. It hasn't stopped Russian tourists from going to see the Chronoplan, though. The uniqueness of this remarkable machine has been difficult to resist for many visitors who have been coming to Dagestan for vacations in light of COVID restrictions. Although the site is officially off-limits, some have been able to sneak inside and take pictures for their social media accounts. Number 2. The abandoned Soviet Mi-8 helicopter. Nestled between the trees in a German forest are the rusting old remains of a Soviet-era helicopter. On the rear section of the aircraft are the faded letters DDR. This tells us that it was once part of the East German Air Force after World War II. Many Soviet Mi-8 helicopters were used by East Germany, 98 in fact, and most were transitioned into the German Luftwaffe once the country reunified back together in 1990. But this one still has the old insignia, so what exactly happened to it? Most likely it was used for ground demonstrations or was simply scrapped instead of being kept with the rest of its squadron. These days there isn't much left of the chopper, and it's pretty much just a shell after being completely stripped out. But some eagle-eyed explorers might note that anyone flying them would have had to take a Russian language lesson. All of the controls are labeled in the Cyrillic alphabet. And at number 1, the SS Bachimo. The SS Bachimo was a steel-hulled freight steamer measuring 230 feet long and weighing 1,322 tons. She was built in Gothenburg, Sweden, and first launched in 1914 under the name SS Angermanelfen. She stayed operational throughout World War I, not as a battleship, but for transporting cargo between Sweden and the German port of Hamburg. But she would later become one of Germany's losses as a result of the conflict and given to the United Kingdom as part of reparations after the Treaty of Versailles. The SS Bachimo, as she was renamed, began service as a cargo ship in the Hudson's Bay Company's fleet back in 1921. Despite being based in Anderson, Scotland, she spent most of her life in the Arctic Ocean, particularly in the westernmost reaches, transporting goods like pelt, tobacco, and sugar around the coasts of Canada. In October of 1931, the SS Bachimo and her crew were transporting furs to Vancouver when the ship got stuck in pack ice. Thankfully, after 2 days, they were able to free the ship and carry on. But a few days after that, on the 8th of October, the ship got stuck once again, and this time she wouldn't budge. The crew decided to abandon the vessel until summer when the ice would melt enough for her to sail again, but some of them camped out nearby just to make sure the ship stayed safe. A month later, on November 24th, a storm rolled in, and the camping members of the crew had to flee. By the time they returned, the SS Bachimo had vanished. A week later, she was found 45 miles away, trapped in more ice. A few of the crew managed to get on board to assess the ship. They concluded that the SS Bachimo was simply beyond repair at this point, and she was finally abandoned for good. This would not be the last time the SS Bachimo was seen. She managed to free herself from the ice once again, and miraculously, was still afloat despite being assessed so badly damaged by her crew. Over the years, there were many sightings of the Bachimo floating around in the ocean. Although people managed to board her in 1939, she would never be successfully controlled again and brought back to port. The SS Bachimo was last spotted in 1969, imprisoned in some more ice once again. Since then, the vessel has not been seen, and no wreckage belonging to her has ever been found. The abandoned ship is still out there somewhere, but no one knows where. Thanks for watching. Which one of these strange vehicles fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See you next time.